Emily always thought of herself as a happy woman. At 32, she had everything she once dreamed of: a cozy home in a small coastal town, a loving husband named Daniel, and their 8-year-old son, Lucas. To neighbors, they looked like the perfect family: breakfast together, evening walks along the pier, laughter at the dinner table. But no one saw what was really happening behind closed doors. Daniel was a successful engineer, but his job consumed almost all of his time. He would come home late at night, tired, distracted, and often ate dinner in silence, scrolling through his phone. Emily tried to talk to him, but all she got was, "I'm tired, let's talk later." Gradually, their conversations were reduced to bills, Lucas's schoolwork, and household chores. The tenderness that once burned between them had faded away, quietly, like melting snow. One rainy evening, Emily stayed longer in a cafe, seeking shelter from the weather. There she met Oliver, an old friend from college. He was a photographer, living a free, creative life. Talking to him reminded Emily of who she used to be: dreamy, alive, laughing for no reason. Oliver looked into her eyes, listened to every word, and asked questions Daniel hadn't asked in years. "What do you want for yourself, Emily?" That question was dangerous. Emily began meeting Oliver more often under the excuse of walks and helping with photos for Lucas's school project. She started to feel beautiful again, desired, valued, and one day the line was crossed. At first, it felt like a sweet secret, but with each passing week, her heart grew heavier. Daniel noticed the changes: the way Emily smiled at her phone, how she came home late, how she avoided his eyes. One night he quietly asked, "Is there someone else?" Emily wanted to lie, but her trembling voice gave her away. Daniel got out of bed and left the room without another word. The next day, he took Lucas to his sister's house, and that evening they sat in the living room. "I'm not here to yell," he began. "I just want to understand. Why?" Emily broke down in tears. "Because I felt invisible, Dan. I was a wife, a mother, a housekeeper. But I stopped being a woman. I wanted warmth, words, a look. Like before. I didn't set out to cheat. I was searching for myself." Daniel lowered his gaze. "I'm guilty too. I buried myself in work and lost you while you were still right next to me." They tried to save the marriage: therapy sessions, long talks, attempts to start fresh, but the crack remained. A year later, they divorced. Emily often wondered if it had been worth it. Yes, Oliver had awakened something forgotten in her. But in return, she had lost the family she once loved. Moral: women don't always cheat out of lust or a passing temptation. Often infidelity is a silent cry for help they never dared to speak aloud. But cheating is never a solution. It only brings more pain. When silence creeps into a relationship, fill it with conversations, not with someone else's arms. Let's start second story. The rain was pouring down on the quiet suburb of Westbridge when Daniel Miller came home earlier than usual. His work trip to Chicago had been cut short, and all he could think about was surprising his wife, Emily. They had been married for 12 years, had 2 children, Sophie, 9, and Ethan, 6. And Daniel had always considered their life almost perfect. As he entered the house, the first thing he noticed was Emily's laughter coming from upstairs. Soft, playful, almost intimate. For a second, he thought maybe she was talking to her sister or a friend. But then he heard a man's voice. His heart began to pound. Slowly, quietly, he climbed the stairs. The bedroom door was half open, and there in the dim light, he saw what no husband should ever see: Emily in the arms of another man. Someone Daniel recognized. It was Matthew, his closest friend since college, the man who had been his best man at their wedding. Daniel froze. His mind went blank. He felt his world tilt, as if the floor had been pulled from under his feet. The woman he had trusted more than anyone, the man he had called his brother, together. Emily gasped when she saw him, pulling the blanket up to cover herself. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like," she stammered. But her trembling voice told him everything. Matthew didn't say a word. He just picked up his shirt, avoiding Daniel's eyes, and walked out. The betrayal was too deep for words. The breaking point. Days that followed were a blur. Daniel moved into the guest room. Emily cried every night, trying to explain, to justify, to beg for forgiveness. She said Matthew was a mistake, a moment of weakness. But for Daniel, it wasn't just one night. It was the shattering of every promise, every memory, every moment they had shared. He replayed their past in his head, the vacations, the late-night talks, the time she held his hand when his father died. Was any of it real? Or had she been lying all along? The truth comes out. One evening, Daniel finally confronted her. "How long?" he asked, his voice cold. Emily's eyes filled with tears. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of deception. 6 months of her smiling at him across the dinner table while loving someone else behind his back. But then came the blow that nearly knocked the breath out of him. "It wasn't just Matthew," Emily whispered. "I was lonely. You were always working, and I needed to feel alive again." Daniel stared at her. "So you destroyed our family because you were bored?" The children. The hardest part was telling Sophie and Ethan. Daniel tried to keep the details from them, but children are sharper than adults think. Sophie asked one night, "Daddy, are you and Mommy going to stop loving each other?" That question broke him more than Emily's betrayal. The end of us. Eventually, Daniel made the choice he never thought he would. Divorce. He didn't want his children growing up in a home filled with lies, his pause. Emily begged him to stay, promising to change, to go to therapy, to do anything. But some wounds don't heal. The last time Daniel saw Matthew was at the courthouse. They didn't speak. The man who once knew all of Daniel's secrets was now a stranger. Aftermath. A year later, Daniel was living in a smaller house, learning to cook for the kids, taking them to school himself. He still thought about Emily sometimes, about what they had, about how quickly it all fell apart. Trust, he realized, is like glass. Once shattered, no matter how you try to piece it together, the cracks will always remain. And Emily, she ended up alone. Matthew left her after a few months, and she never found someone who looked at her the way Daniel once did. Moral: sometimes the greatest betrayal doesn't just take away the person you love. It changes who you are forever.